This is a debut in yellow, written by Kraiva. Part 2 of Surrogate, the Director's Cut. The rating is mature. No archive warnings apply. The relationship category is general. The fandom is Malevolent, the podcast.
Additional tags. Kane is also there, but mostly just mentioned. Hoster is a petty bitch and tantrums about dumb shit. Arthur Lester is trying his best. John is mad because he is angry. If Hoster doesn't want to be bullied, why is he so easy to bully? Trigger warning, non-consensually giving a child a puppy.
Voices by Vampirism as the narrator and Pharaoh, Flamia as Hoster, a dancer, the Dark Young, and Shub Niggeroth, Jasper as Arthur, Lynn Larsh as John, Igneous as Kane, SSJTrinity, Kraiva, and Somniate as the work introduction. Editing by Flamia, directed by Vampirism, transcript by Saffron, created and posted with permission from the authors of Surrogate, the Director's Cut.
5 weeks ago, Arthur Lester experienced what was possibly the worst day of his life. Now, he and John are in Carcosa, writing music for the King in Yellow, on the whims of an outer god who seems to find this entire situation much funnier than anyone involved does. And all he needs to do is get through a birthday party.
As uncomfortable and fraught as his return to Carcosa was, Arthur was beginning to get in the hang of it. It had been some weeks since he was cast as one of the main characters in some sort of play for the entertainment of an outer god, or so John had informed him, as he was a bit distracted at the time of negotiations, and a routine had developed for them. He would wake up to the feeling of warm sunlight and a gentle, fragrant breeze through the window of the chambers that he had been so reluctantly assigned by the king. Breakfast was always left outside the door, still warm, or cool as the menu demanded. He would struggle through a morning routine, dress, eat. John narrated the sights around him, of the view of the beautiful courtyard gardens he enjoyed. Arthur suspected this was a bit of a stab at him, to have a view he couldn't fully appreciate, and he would sit at the grand piano provided in his rooms for a time. Sometimes he would even touch the keys, to at least pretend he was willing to play his assigned role as court composer for the King in Yellow. For the most part, he was free to roam wherever he wished in the palace, as long as John behaved. And then it came time for his favorite time of day, the moment he looked forward to as much as it still set his heart aching. The air was thick with tension, as it always was, and Arthur found his place-setting at the long table. He was beginning to get used to it, the 73 steps to his seat, the suffocating silence as the king glowered at him from the head of the table, John seething in the back of his mind as he sat down and groped for the napkin on the plate. And then, there was a childish giggle and a joyful cry of,
"Daddy, Uncle, I'm here for dinner."
Arthur could hear the shift of the king's robes as Hastur rose in his seat.
"Hello, darling."
"Hello, Pharaoh."
Arthur smiled in the direction of her voice, tears pricking at the corner of his eyes, and John began to narrate.
Pharaoh is dressed in a simple yellow tunic with a ribbon tying her collar closed in a bow. Her hair has been carefully braided, and a golden ribbon has tied off the end of her braid. She's wearing no sandals, and I think she came in from outside. Her feet have some dirt on them.
"Pharaoh, I asked you to wash up before dinner."
I did.
Her voice was high and girlish, and befitting a child of 3.
She is showing us her hands.
All clean. See?
If you're not going to wear shoes outside, you must also wash your feet. You know the rules, baby. No muddy footprints in the castle.
She is sticking her tongue out at Haster.
Like a whisper, Arthur felt the presence of something on his right, and he flinched, earning a chuckle from the god at the head of the table. And John growled.
"Dinner is served,"
said the silken voice of one of the dancers, and a plate was placed in front of him. It's a scene that John has narrated at least a dozen times before Arthur finally asked him to stop, as he could recite it by memory. A golden plate, covered by a cloche, is set down on the table. With a flourish it is lifted, revealing the first course.
It's a soup of some kind.
John's voice is heavy with suspicion.
Hot?
Fraught answers before John can.
No, silly. It's cold.
He can almost see the look of concentration on her face.
It's bisque.
Bisque. You almost got it.
Arthur gingerly picks up his spoon and scoots his chair a bit closer to the table. Across from his place setting, he can hear the slurp of a small child happily eating a thick, creamy soup from a spoon.
What's she doing?
His spoon moving silently through his own bowl's contents. John was silent for a long, sulky moment.
She's eating her soup.
John, please.
She's eating soup, Arthur. I don't know what to tell you.
You should answer in peace.
There's a cruel chuckle in his voice.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
Arthur dropped his spoon and reached out to smack his left hand.
John!
You said a bad word.
Arthur does not need Fraught's frown to be described to him.
John, we agreed. No more swearing.
For once, I agree with him.
Haster's voice vibrates with suppressed amusement.
Say sorry.
Your spoon's handle is roughly at the 4 o'clock position on the bowl.
John!
Apologize, please.
I'm not apologizing. Arthur, pick up your spoon and eat.
Say sorry. Or you're not invited to my birthday party tomorrow.
Fraught's tiny hands smack against the table. The dining room went so silent, one could hear a pin drop.
Birthday party?
Arthur?
Yes, Arthur. Her birthday party.
Haster's voice was bored, as if he was discussing the weather, and not the most devastating thing he'd said to Arthur in the last 2 weeks.
I've been planning it for quite some time.
Arthur, ignore him.
But it's...
Unconsciously, Arthur reached out, and his left hand captured his right, giving him a tight, comforting squeeze.
It's not...
Yes, well, I was a bit busy on the actual day. No thanks to you too.
But why wasn't I...
Uncle Arthur! Make Mr. John say sorry, or he can't come to my party.
What are you going to do? Forbid me from coming?
His voice came out in a snarl, a cacophony building upon itself inside Arthur's skull.
How exactly will you manage that?
I suppose neither of them will get too calm then.
Arthur began to shake, and John growled. And...
But Daddy...
Fraught's voice cutting through the noise and providing a single, focused point for Arthur's fragile mind to grasp.
Uncle Arthur has to come.
John
began to laugh.
Be quiet.
Daddy, you said you would invite him. I want him to come.
There was a beat of silence, and Arthur clasped at his left hand.
Don't let him push you around like this, Arthur.
She wants me to.
His voice was a weak sob.
Please, John. Please.
With a noise like teeth gritting against each other, John spoke.
I'm sorry, Thoreau.
There was a shuffle on the other side of the table.
I forgive you. Are you gonna play a song for me tomorrow, Uncle Arthur?
What?
Ugh.
You are the royal composer. Surely you worked on something for the occasion?
The occasion we didn't know about?
John!
Fine. She's looking at you, Arthur. She looks expectant.
I think I have something, yes.
Arthur could hear a happy squeal from the other side of the table.
I'll just need to, polish it.
Of course you do.
Hastur's voice rumbled across the table.
Now, if you would eat. You insult my hospitality by not touching your food.
John seethed in the back of his mind as Arthur picked up the spoon and, very carefully, took a bite of the food. It was the most delicious seafood bisque he had ever tasted. When morning came, Arthur was groggy, sweat-stricken, and unshaven, but he'd got it.
Thank you.
He was rubbing his eyes and yawning. Blearily, he noted that birds had begun singing outside.
I don't know that I could have finished it without your encouragement.
You're welcome, Arthur. I've never been on this side of the creative process before. It was nice, and I certainly appreciated the company.
Do you get lonely while I sleep?
Arthur washed his face in the small basin by the window, the water cool against his skin, and he tilted his face up, as if looking himself in the mirror, as if looking at John.
You spend enough time in someone's head, and you would miss the conversation too.
It wasn't quite an answer to the question. A knock at the door startled the both of them, 3 sharp raps.
Let them wait.
Who is it?
Arthur!
It's Thoreau!
Thoreau called from the other side of the door, and Arthur was moving to it without a thought, flinging the door open, blind eyes searching for her.
She's there, Arthur. Tilt your head down a bit higher. Yes.
Good morning. I don't usually see you this early, so I wasn't ready.
It's okay. I just wanted to make sure you were still coming, that's all. And that Mr. John wasn't mad at you.
She's wearing a dress that sparkles with beadwork, with a full, broad skirt that shimmers with fractal lace. It's in his yellow, as you likely have guessed, and accented with gold. Her hair is tied back with a golden ribbon, and a small golden tiara with black gemstones adorns her head. It looks as if it's inspired by the black stars outside.
You look very pretty, Thoreau.
Arthur said, kneeling. The girl giggled, the sound bright and cheerful, and enough to send a sharp stab of pain through Arthur's chest.
Daddy wanted to make sure everyone knew I was a princess. And when Daddy said he wanted you to be dressed right too, I wanted to come show you.
Oh, there's a dancer standing behind her.
Arthur froze in alarm.
It's not moving, though. It's just watching. And, oh shit!
Mr. John!
A tiny sandaled foot stomped.
You said!
Sorry.
He spat the words out.
It's holding something out to you.
Daddy wants you to wear those. He said you couldn't come if you didn't, and I wanted to make sure you came. Will you wear them, please?
I will.
Arthur took the heavy fabric in his hand. He could feel embroidery and much more fabric than he would have guessed.
I promise.
Yay!
Moreau clapped, and there was a sound that Arthur imagined was the swish of the girl spinning, sending her skirt flaring outward.
I'll see you downstairs then. Hurry!
His empty gaze followed the girl as she skipped down the hall, before he stood, took a step back, and closed the door.
All right, then. Which way is, up?
Arthur heard the chatter of people long before he arrived in the throne room, and he struggled to move in his new outfit. John had described something like a hybrid of a tuxedo and a cultist's robe, all coattails and heavy brocade, and, of course, all in yellow. John hadn't told him the color, but Arthur could infer from the heavy, bubbling silence that loomed in the back of his head when he'd asked. He wasn't too happy about the idea either, and would express that if he thought it would get him anywhere at all.
He's taunting us. Dressing us up like he owns us. Like we're his sycophants. Like...
We aren't doing this for him, John.
Arthur's right hand coming to a spot just below his left elbow and squeezing.
We're doing this for her.
A correction. I am doing this for you.
You are.
Arthur gave his arm, their arm, a squeeze again.
Thank you. I mean it.
A grumble sounded from the back of his head, and Arthur pushed the door open and stepped into the throne room.
The throne room is massive, with a vaulted ceiling and columns along the walls.
The nearest courtiers fell silent as Arthur walked in, and he could hear them beginning to whisper amongst themselves.
Sunlight streams in from numerous high windows, and the flagstones are made of polished black marble. There are hundreds of people here, dressed in all colors, all of them in their finest, and...
He paused, then, suddenly unsure.
And?
Arthur looked around, the movement of frantic, unconscious impulse.
There are other creatures too, Arthur.
Oh, God.
They are intermingling, peacefully, with the people here. The dancers are scattered throughout, and appear to be keeping everyone in line.
Where is Faro? And where should I go?
I see the piano. Turn a bit to your right. No, your right. Yes. Now head straight forward. I don't think anyone here wants to be too close to us.
Not after what happened to my predecessor.
I believe that's correct.
And Fro?
John grumbled.
She has a small throne directly to the right of Hastur's. Like his, it is carved out of some sort of black stone. It's a bit too big for her. She hasn't noticed us. Arthur, the piano!
Arthur let out a soft yelp as his shin smacked against the piano bench, causing some of the nearest courtiers to laugh at his expense, and he groped blindly for the seat.
Should I sit?
I don't think so. Everyone else is standing.
All at once, a hush fell over the room.
Hastur raised a hand.
My devoted subjects,
The King in Yellow's voice echoed across the throne room.
welcome. Welcome to this most glorious day, a day of celebration. You are honored in my halls. Those of you who are here, you have been chosen for a great and precious thing, which has never occurred in all of known time, and will never occur again. For this day, I will present my child.
The shocked silence was glorious, even as the words dripped acid into Arthur's chest.
I show you here one who has amazed me, one who has moved my spirit, who shines brighter than the stars of Dreamlands, and more brilliantly than the twin suns of Carcosa itself. She has risen above her filthy species, to show herself greater, better, superior to every other specimen of her wasteful, pitiful breed. I present to you Fraught Lester Yellow, Princess of Carcosa, Duchess of Yetil, Countess of the Dreamlands, my daughter.
Arthur did not chance a word, but as his right hand gripped his left, John spoke.
I'm not sure what he did, but she's cast in a golden light, glittering like a precious gem amongst the black stone of her throne. Her feet, they're so far off the ground, her throne puts her nearly at level with Haster.
Arthur squeezed.
She looks happy.
The court began murmuring, and Arthur could hear the swish of Haster's robed arm sweep upward to silence it.
Never again will you behold a human this magnificent. Though, as I understand, some of you have forgotten what they are, I have ensured a proper model for you to compare her radiance against. As such, I also present one whom the humans have occasionally celebrated in their little villages. One of their more creative spawns, who now attends my court as my slave.
What the fuck is he saying?
Arthur let out a single hollow laugh. It was barely audible. It was a bad sound, a sound too close to the broken sounds from a month ago. His hands shook. He knew where this was going.
Arthur, this motherfucking...
Let it go. It doesn't matter. How does she look?
John didn't get a chance to answer.
Karloff displeased me.
An understanding murmur rippled through the crowd as he both acknowledged and dismissed his former musician's death.
And while this foul creature has a great many flaws, he does have one meager skill of note. Behold, my new royal composer, Arthur.
Arthur did not see so much as feel the spotlight swinging upon him, isolating him, pointing him out where he stood beside the piano. It felt both scorchingly hot and bitterly cold, and as Haster began to laugh deeply, wickedly, Arthur realized that his costume was not just to denote him as a member of the court. As laughter began to sound from the congregants, he shuddered, the garish robe nearly swallowing him, just as he wished for one accursed second that the ground would swallow him, too. Arthur could feel the king's gaze upon him, just as he felt his words like a punch to the gut, and let out his breath slowly, very slowly.
Fine.
He stepped forward. This was not about him. This was about Fraught. And for Fraught, he could do anything he was asked.
Our new court composer has prepared a piece for my little Fraught.
His clear amusement rippled through the throne room and inspired more laughter from his courtiers. Shit. It's fine. It's fine. he had this.
You've got this.
Because in this moment there was no other choice, and Arthur felt his left hand pull the piano bench beneath him, settling him down on it. His right hand found the keys, and his left, well, he assumed John took position like they had practiced. And for the first time in a very, very long time, Arthur began to play for his daughter. It helped, maybe, that John had been asking him to play for quite some time now. On the rare occasions he had access to a piano, and the threat of certain death didn't loom over him. It also helped that he couldn't see what must have been nearly innumerable eyes on him while he played. But what helped, more than anything, was the knowledge that she heard him. He held the final note for a moment, his throat thick with tears, and then jumped when applause began to sound. It was genuine, if confused, applause, and Arthur felt as shocked as the courtiers around him seemed to be. It was his best work yet, he knew this, and from the silence in the direction of the thrones, Hastur appeared to as well. It had been good, shockingly good, and for a brief, surreal moment Arthur wondered if he had done something wrong.
Arthur, you're right!
A small body latched tight around his leg, a giggle sounding.
Thank you, Arthur!
She liked it. Tears threatened to spill over from his eyes, and Arthur very carefully patted the girl's shoulders.
You're welcome, Fro.
He paused, swallowing thickly.
Happy birthday.
Something thick and muscled swept between his leg and his Faro, and Arthur almost screamed, if not for the sound of Faro calling.
Daddy, no!
In her playful toddler voice and the rumble of the king.
That's quite enough, little one. Now, let's see what other gifts your subjects bring you.
For a time, John described the monotony of people approaching, bowing, cooing over Faro, and presenting whatever they deemed appropriate for a birthday gift in the Dreamlands, with varying levels of success. Arthur suspected that many of the gifts were actually tribute for Hastur, who would murmur appreciatively and coach Faro's tiny voice into thanks when she was clearly bored. Before long, she was getting restless, and John chuckled at the sight.
She keeps squirming in her seat. I don't think she likes the party.
Daddy,
Faro said, almost as if on cue.
how much longer till cake?
Only a few more, little one.
Arthur could hear the swish of robes as he waved the next courtiers up.
And then, cake.
But
A boom and an accompanying crash sounded from the entrance to the throne room, and a series of gasps rippled throughout. Arthur heard a distinct crack of stone from the king's tentacles as they gripped his throne, and he clutched at the piano bench uselessly.
John?
My God. Something just came through the doors.
What? Where's Fro?
Arthur's head snapped towards the thrones, his face racked with fear.
Hastur's got her wrapped up in his tentacles. She's fine.
But she...
She's fine, Arthur.
Oh God. What is it?
Thunderous footsteps sounded, methodical even as their great weight cracked the flagstones beneath them. Arthur heard the gasps of the courtiers scrambling to get out of its way.
I think it's invisible, at least to people who can't see the way we can. I can't see its main bulk, but the edges of it. They warp the air, like how light shining through a crystal warps the sun and casts rainbows on the ground. It's massive, Arthur, and it's got so many legs. It's going towards them.
There was a loud, keening cry that rattled Arthur's teeth in his skull, that shook the windows of the throne room, that caused the courtiers to scream in fear. And then Arthur heard as parts of the voice, because it was so many, he realized, so many voices, began to harmonize and fall in line with itself and unify, and this creature, at last, spoke.
The Black Coat of the Woods sends her regards, King.
A hushed pall fell over the throne room, and Arthur reeled, heart pounding.
It's bowing. Oh my God. I think it's one of her young. I think it's invisible on purpose.
Your mother does me a great honor.
Hastur was very careful. The air was thick with the stench of animal and the sharp, sour undercurrent of fear.
Why can't I see you?
Pharaoh's tiny voice demanded.
Mother congratulates you on the newest addition to your family. She offers a gift as a token of her well wishes.
There was a great pause as the weight of the words settled over the court.
Happy 3rd birthday, little Pharaoh.
A sound like something large being moved.
It's produced a box.
A box? How? What size? Describe it. John!
It is a box roughly the size of Pharaoh. I would guess roughly 3 feet long, 3 feet high, and 3 feet deep. It appears to be wrapped in paper. The paper is bright red and covered in pictures of colorful ovals with strings on them.
Balloons?
Yes, there is a ribbon on the box. Pharaoh is staring at it.
Daddy?
The girl's voice was unsure. Hastur made a noise that suggested clearing his throat.
We thank your mother for her generous gift, and we shall open it at a later...
The kinglet shall open it now.
The creature's voice boomed across the throne room.
Mother would be very disappointed to hear her gift was ill-received.
So this was that sort of gift.
Go on, baby.
He let her go, Arthur. She's walking to the box.
Oh my God.
Arthur's hands clenched the hem of his coat, twisting it between his white-knuckled grip.
Hello, Pharaoh.
There was a sound of a massive creature settling on the ground.
You didn't answer me. Why can't I see you all the way?
The creature was silent for a moment.
Politeness.
She's nodding. She's pulling on the ribbon. The top is falling away.
In that moment, Pharaoh gasped. and a tiny bleat rang through the air.
Daddy!
Joy was evident in her voice.
Daddy, look! Daddy, look at it!
Softly, John began to laugh.
What?
It's...
John took a moment to steel himself, to attempt to calm his laughter.
Oh, how to begin.
Stop your insolence at once!
A voice hissed, echoing thunderously in Arthur's head.
It's a goat.
Another crackle of laughter escaped him as he pointedly ignored Haster.
Not quite a goat, I suppose. It's the size of a large dog, or a small pony, large enough for Fraught to ride. Its body is covered in, I think, some sort of tree bark, or some sort of armor-like covering. I can see what might be stringy fur, or what might be roots hanging from its belly. In the cracks between the plates covering it, there are dozens of eyes. It's a black goat kid.
The creature bleated again, tiny hooves tapping on the flagstones, and Fraught squealed in delight.
Daddy, it's a baby!
She sounded so excited, and between John's clear amusement and her overwhelming joy, Arthur felt he could chance a smile.
And it's for me!
The smile on his face died when Haster spoke.
A very generous gift.
His voice simmered with rage, so potent that Arthur could feel the trembling beneath his feet.
Mother accepts your thanks graciously, and hopes that my youngest sibling shall grow alongside the kinglet in peace and safety.
I understand.
It was little more than a hiss.
The creature's rising. And it's gone.
What do you mean, gone?
Arthur struggled to uncurl his fingers from the hem of his coat, his thumb catching on the ridges where embroidery had left impressions on his skin.
It's vanished. I don't know where. I suppose it went back to...
Further festivities shall be held in the courtyard.
Despite his jovial tone, Arthur could hear the thrashing of massive, angry tentacles from the direction of the thrones.
My dancers shall escort you. Refreshments will be served shortly.
There was a pause, a murmur from the courtiers.
Go!
The court scattered like rats caught in the light.
We should go.
Arthur stood and began to move.
You shall stay!
Haster's voice, furious and nearly a roar, echoed in Arthur's skull as what he assumed was a tentacle lashed around his right leg, rooting him to the spot.
Daddy?
The dancers will take you outside with your new friend.
The king's voice very, very carefully measured not to upset her.
Go play, darling, and eat.
I want cake.
There will be cake when Daddy finishes speaking with Uncle Arthur and John.
His voice was not measured so much as disguised by some sort of illusion, Arthur realized. He could tell because he could ever so faintly hear the fury beneath it, howling, screaming.
Okay.
There was a slap of sandals on the ground, and the sound of clacking hooves following close behind, and the excited chatter of a child with a new pet.
Come on this way. This is the bestest birthday party. You like cake? Later we're having cake. It's my favorite. But we're gonna go look out here first. This is really cool courtyard.
And then the door closed.
This.
His voice shook the columns of the throne room as he seized Arthur and pulled him, flailing, into the air.
Is your fault.
My fault?
Arthur sputtered as a snarl sounded from John.
Not you, you useless sack of meat!
Stone cracked and shattered, and Arthur suppressed a cry as chips of stone stung against his skin.
You really are lucky King got to us first.
John's voice was cruel and laughing.
You have no idea what you've done.
They were moving, and Arthur suspected the only reason he hadn't been hurled across the room was because the king needed him alive to fulfill Kane's requirements.
One of her young in my court, following my daughter.
Hastur screamed, the sound drowning out the momentary agony of someone else calling Fraught daughter. The tentacle holding him surged with sympathetic movement as something very large was hurled across the room, shattering and crashing and breaking.
For fuck's sake, calm down!
The surging tentacle went still. He felt himself rotated, very slowly, and could feel the weight of the god's rage-filled stare upon him.
How dare you!
Stop throwing a tantrum and think logically.
Well done, Arthur.
The tentacle holding him was shaking, and Arthur fought the urge to squirm. His heart was racing, just as his mind raced to process this information.
Shub-Niggurath clearly was not sending that creature to attack Fraught.
I agree. If she intended to harm her, I doubt the goat kid's mature sibling would have been quite so polite.
The blind leading the blind.
Arthur, he's...
Arthur was dropped roughly to the ground, and he yelped as his right ankle twisted, his blindness making it impossible to land gracefully.
You petulant children know nothing.
Rattling hiss filled the throne room as Arthur pulled himself to his knees.
You have no idea the danger you have put this place in. Put her in.
John growled, and Arthur balled his left hand into a fist.
Then stop fucking bloviating about it. Tell us!
Tell you?
It was a roar, and Arthur raced to cover his head as more masonry shattered on the floor.
You carried around her book for how long? And yet, you don't know the first thing about her?
I've got you, Arthur.
John murmured, comforting. Arthur's numb left hand closed around his right bicep, giving him a gentle squeeze.
He's pacing.
Oh, but of course, your other god merely shows up and plays his funny tricks because you're too simple to comprehend the machinations behind it. You dance on his strings and play along because you're too stupid.
Get to the point.
If you thought for one moment that what Kane was going to do to Fraught was bad,
his voice nearly in Arthur's ear,
then just know that she outclasses him. And now, one of her children is trotting around my court.
Arthur felt sick all at once, his mouth going cotton dry. No. Silence reigned for a long moment, punctuated only by the slick lashing of tentacles.
Then why didn't you kill it?
The force of the king's gaze on Arthur would have bowled him over, if not for the fact that Arthur had been dealing with him for the better part of a month.
What?
If its mere presence is an attack and puts Fraught in danger, why didn't you kill it?
How dare?
It's a good question. Are you not strong enough?
I could smite that wretch in an instant, grind it into paste, and paint it upon...
But you didn't.
Didn't? Or can't.
A noise like breaking teeth sounded from the god.
For God's sake, stop it! Both of you.
Arthur pushed himself to his feet, wincing when he put weight on his bad ankle and trying to avoid the worst bits of broken floor.
John, where's the nearest place I can sit? My ankle.
There's a broken piece of Haster's throne about 20 steps to your right. A bit further to your... there.
Please warn me before I smack my shin into it this time.
A pause while Arthur limped towards the rock.
Stop. It's right in front of you. Lean down and...
Arthur's hand touched the rough chunk of stone, and he sighed.
So, you chose not to strike out at the dark young. Why?
To strike at her children would anger her.
And it's safe to assume she isn't stupid. And she knew that when sending her children to your court. So, why send them at all? Is this child... Can't she see through its eyes? Is it a spy?
Cain made it sound as if he didn't need to be present to see what was happening. I doubt the other outer gods would need to as well.
Is this what you two do? Ask foolish questions and expect answers to simply appear?
It's worked out better for us than your genius plots have worked for you.
John!
Arthur rubbed a hand over his face, wincing as he moved his twisted ankle.
Hosta, answer the question.
If Shub-Niggurath wished to know the goings-on in my court, no. She needs no spies.
Which brings us back to the beginning. Why? Her elder child went through the trouble to be invisible, or at least invisible enough it wouldn't drive everyone mad.
Pharaoh.
Haster's voice rumbled, and while there was still fury, it had cooled. Just.
Is Pharaoh the only mortal member of your court?
Be silent, peace.
No, it's also a good question. Is she?
No.
As if his answer was being forced from him.
So it being visible
would likely be considered a direct attack, which she clearly did not intend.
So it was being genuine, it was being polite.
I refuse to be subject to his inane show of your deductive reasoning. It was an insult.
And yet...
Arthur leaned onto his good leg, his face screwed into a look of deep thought.
The real question is why risk leaving one of her children here?
Haster was silent, save for the slick lashing of tentacles, and John began to laugh again.
John, please stop provoking him. I can't take more screaming right now.
I believe I can answer your question.
Be silent, peace.
She gave Thoreau a puppy, Arthur. You heard her excitement, and you can't get rid of it without upsetting Thoreau or making the Black Goat angry, and therefore giving her permission to interfere.
She's an outer god. She was... John, do you think?
I think that this was a gift for Thoreau, yes. And if other outer gods are paying attention, maybe even a bodyguard. But I think, more than anything, this was a threat.
I will destroy you when I get you out of a useless shell.
Careful, or I might just have a good long talk with that goat.
Haster shrieked in indignation and vanished, the silence left behind thunderously loud as the remaining echoes of his fury faded.
You don't need to poke at him, John.
Arthur's voice small in the massive room. John began to laugh, and soon Arthur began to as well, hysterical tears welling in his eyes as he slumped forward and rested his elbows on his knees. His left hand moved upward, wiping away his tears, and he laughed at the absurdity of knowing that in some insane, incalculable way, someone seemed to be rooting for them. Deep in a dark old forest, in a clearing under the stars, a slow clap sounded.
You cheeky bitch!
A human man in a rumpled suit was laughing, clapping his hands. His face was boyish and joyful, upturned in the purplish light of a dreamland's night.
That was inspired! The drama, the tantrum. I'm not even angry that you rammed into my turf!
I thought you would appreciate that.
The voice of the other creature was silken, motherly even.
I trust you remember my rules.
Oh, Shubby.
He stepped towards the massive, lounging shape in the trees.
How could I forget? Besides, you know I don't like kids. Even yours. Really, though, rude. A heads up would have been nice. And I don't want anyone else thinking they can just butt in.
That's what my child is for, darling.
The black goat's voice rippling with amusement.
And besides, I think you owe me this one.
Oh, I can't stay mad at you. Just no more meddling. I don't need a co-writer mucking up my plot lines.
She laughed, dark and melodious.
Until your little series ends. I promise.
Cain threw his head back and laughed, and the stars shivered above.
If you enjoyed this production of Surrogate, the Director's Cut, please read the original written work on AO3, where it is still actively updating as of December 2023. A link is in the work notes, where you can also find the social medias of the production cast. Malevolent was written and produced by Harlan Guthrie, and all characters depicted here belong to their respective creators. The cast and management produced the show for no monetary gain, and all rights remain with the authors. Any sound effects or music used in this production were obtained legally or created by the production cast. Please let us know your thoughts, and, as Cain would say,
stay tuned for the next episode!